statistical mathematical fact
never has been down.
has broken every single record. There is no asset that has come close.
It's the only thing in the industry that was not touched, that was not hacked, and it never fails doing what it promised in 2009. It's never
What's
failed.
the best performing asset the world has ever seen? And you'll find out that it's Bitcoin.
Hello, Bitcoiners. Hello, traders. Hello, supporters. Hello, followers. Hello, haters. Hello to everyone. I hope I'm coming through okay. I hope I'm not sounding too much like I am in a vacuum here, but I just wanted to touch base with you very quickly. I want to welcome you to another brief live space with Oliver Velez. Of course, my name is Oliver Velez, and I'm very glad that you're here. So come on in, make yourselves comfortable. This is going to be somewhat of a short session here. I think you'll step out of it. I think this might be a bit better. All right, so grab the beverage of your choice. Maybe you want to grab something to take notes with as well. I actually want to talk to you today live about something I think that everyone should be aware of. And that is that there is literally no one selling Bitcoin today. And while I have to tell you that I haven't been in this space an inordinate amount of time, in fact, I got orange pilled, for lack of a better phrase, in the early part of 2020. So I actually consider myself relatively a baby in the Bitcoin space, but I am a very careful watcher of markets. Before I made my plunge into Bitcoin, I studied it for over a year, close to a year and a half. I watched it. I can't say I watched it on a day-to-day basis, but I certainly watched it on a week-to-week basis. I monitored it. And I began going down the rabbit hole, that proverbial Bitcoin rabbit hole. And I finally made my first plunge in March of 2020. I used the collapse that occurred on March 12th and 13th as my opportunity to make the plunge. I tell you that to say that I don't, by any stretch of the imagination, consider myself a Bitcoin expert in any way, but I do consider myself an expert at watching markets. And I watch markets deeper than your average person watches them. And I'll explain that in just a few moments. For those of you who have been with me on this Bitcoin journey, some of you have been with me since the very beginning. I announced this journey in late 2019 before we all made the plunge into Bitcoin. I had close to 10,000 people waiting for my signal to make the plunge. So those of you who have been with me throughout this journey, you know that I have never been a buyer of anything through one source. I learned in my professional career that can potentially be suicide if you are on the professional side. And so as professionals, we've always been taught to spread our buy activity, even our sell activity, across a variety of different outlets. And I actually do the same with Bitcoin. I do not accumulate my Bitcoin from one source. In fact, I accumulate my Bitcoin over 8 different venues, 8 different entities, if you will. And that's what I want to talk to you about. I actually purchase Bitcoin virtually every single day of my life. Again, a number of you know this. I purchase virtually every single day, and sizable, really, really sizable portions every single week. And I've done this for the last 3+ years. Some of the outlets that I use are what's called over the counter operations, or OTC desks, which is the common term that most people are familiar with. These are organizations that basically they basically pair large buyers, relatively large buyers and sellers together, so that there is minimal impact on the spot price of the underlying item. So that's really all an OTC desk is. It is simply an entity that has garnered enough clientele of a certain caliber that allows them to always, in most cases, be able to pair a few buyers with a few sellers. That transaction does not happen in a spot Bitcoin type of way. And this is how relatively large transactions can take place without moving the spot price. And as an example of that, if I want to buy $100 million of Bitcoin, but I don't want to go to the spot market, I know that that is going to have somewhat of an impact on the spot market price, which is not beneficial to me. I'll use an entity that might be able to pair my $100,000 buy with a number of sellers that they might be able to get together to sell $100 million worth of Bitcoin. And that transaction is basically a peer-to-peer transaction. It has zero effect on the spot price. Any effect on the spot price from an OTC transaction is basically leakage. That's what it's called in the professional industry. It's called leakage, right? So, for instance, if a major government stepped in and wanted to buy X number amount of Bitcoin, that kind of information would be so powerful that the people involved would leak it to friends and other people, and you'd start to see the spot price respond to the leaked information, but not necessarily the trade itself, the peer-to-peer over-the-counter trade itself. And a lot of regular market participants, a lot of retail, they don't get or understand how these massive institutions can come in and actually be on an accumulation binge and the price doesn't move. Well, it's peer-to-peer. It's over-the-counter accumulation, and it takes time when you want size. So if one buyer wants a size that is bigger than the sellers that the OTC desk has, they have to actually try to go out and drum up new sellers or find new sellers to match the buy side or the demand side they're getting from one giant client. So anyway, my point is that I have my tentacles across a variety of liquidity providers in the Bitcoin space and a variety of OTC desks. They are somewhat different. Liquidity providers and OTC desks are different types of entities, but that's a talk for a different time. All right. And I will talk about those two differences in a special talk, because I want to talk to you about how OTC desk and liquidity providers help perpetuate the shitcoin industrial complex, and how those two together can manipulate these shitcoin prices to create a beautiful looking price history that outperforms Bitcoin, but it's all manipulated by OTC desk and liquidity providers that are hired by these shitcoins. But anyway, that's a different topic. But I've got my tentacles spread out across a variety of liquidity providers in the space and a variety of OTC desks, which I use. And I will tell you this. All right. I can't mention names or anything like that. But what I will tell you is that my personal purchases are becoming more difficult. And so many of these OTC desks have minimums to deal with them. Like most of them start around $100,000, right? So if you want to buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, you're just not going to use them. They don't deal in that small of a size. So a lot of them start off at 100,000. There are some OTC desks that have a $500,000 minimum and so forth and so on, right? I am telling you that every single OTC desk that I deal with has lowered the minimum. Now, I want you to think about that. They can't get their minimum anymore. So if an OTC desk had a minimum of, well, we only will take you on if you're willing to do $100,000 at a shot or more, now is $50,000 at a shot or more because they can't get 100,000. They can't get sellers to be willing to let go of the minimums they used to have. And across the board, in my experience, the ones that I deal with have lowered their minimums and they're having difficulty getting the normal size that I'm used to. Now, that's my personal experience. Okay. I can only speak directly from my personal experience that I am having to accumulate less than I normally do because it's simply not available. Now, when I say it's not available, I am not saying that I can't go on Coinbase and buy Bitcoin. That is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about OTC availability where the size is. I'm not talking about retail supply here. Retail supply is available, but chunky supply on OTC desks that don't want to move the price, that can't operate on a Coinbase because that'll move the price. That's the type of supply. It's the institutional amount of supply. It's the heavy hitter supply is simply not available. I am telling you, I am feeling this personally. I am seeing it personally. Now, I just had a meeting with a good friend of mine who also has additional contacts and deals with other OTC desks that I don't deal with, and he's having the same difficulty. And he's telling me, Oliver, they just can't find merchandise. Oliver, they can't get their hands on Bitcoin without moving the price. Nobody wants to move the price, but they're up against a wall right now. They can't find it. The only way for them to get it at this point going forward is they have to move the price. So I want you to understand there is a supply that's typically always available that you can get without having any impact on the price. That supply is waning down to pathetically low levels. And we're getting to the place where the only way new buyers coming into the market are going to be able to buy is that they're going to have to move the price. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm feeling. And I'm here to tell you live. The reason why I had this I felt kind of almost compelled to tell you this is that you better not F up the easiest play of our entire lifetimes. If you get this wrong, you deserve to be poor forever. If you get this one wrong, you're an absolute dummy. It couldn't be more in your face than anything that I can ever remember in my entire life. And I am telling you, I'm giving you a warning. Don't fuck this up. Do not mess this one up. There is a front running going on right now that will soon not be able to be kept secret. And I am telling you from my own personal experience, this is what's freaking happening. And so, like I'm always telling you, you better wake up and you better start stacking harder if you do not want to miss this. And I am actually somewhat tired of hearing all of this rhetoric from what British Hodl might call the $10 DCA gang. They seem to have the biggest mouths and seem to be the most intelligent and speak the most authoritatively as if they're experts. But I am tired of hearing this rhetoric, though. Oh, yeah, it's the ETF approval news is going to be a disappointment because everybody's thinking about it. Everybody's looking forward to it, and it's going to be a sell the news event. That is not my view at all. I think that's actually asinine to even think that. These people have no clue of how enormous this ETF move that's going to be made in early 2024 is. These people have never in their entire lives lived through the formation of a brand new asset class. Never. These people that are saying this nonsense, they've never seen a country, they've never lived through when a country is clamoring for something that they haven't been able to get despite clamoring for it and finally get. I lived through this. I know what an ETF approval can do in an industry with a new asset class that people have been waiting for a long time. I lived through this with the gold ETF. GLD is the symbol. Look it up. I lived through this. I plunked a big portion of the wealth I had accumulated up until that time in the GLD ETF in January of 2005. And it was approved and launched late 2004. And I will tell you that most people don't understand what people who weren't around during that time, or even if they do, they weren't aware during that time, is the fact that America had been clamoring for a spot gold ETF for a long time. The same movie is being played out now with Bitcoin. That the US was not the first gold ETF, that other countries had formed gold ETFs a year, 2 years, as much as 3 years before the United States. And everybody was wondering, why on earth are we the last ones? And what people don't understand is that the US regulators use other countries as their beta ground, as their testing ground to see first what can go wrong, what can we do better. Canada in particular has historically been the testing ground for US regulators about anything financial. Why do you think Canada as a country, as almost like a buddy friend, always does something first? Why do you think why do you think they had gold ETFs before the United States? Testing ground. Why do you think Canada had a Bitcoin ETF before the United States? Testing ground. These people have no clue of what they're talking about. They have no sense of history. And they talk so authoritatively, like they're so intelligent about things, and it's absolutely the opposite. The same movie is being played out that was played in the gold market all the way back in late 2004. And these ETFs tend to be approved around the beginning of a brand new year. They're very rarely, when it's a new asset class, launched in the middle of a year. They're usually launched at the end of a year or the beginning of the year to give the ETF almost a full year of performance. I've lived through this. And another thing most people are missing about the enormity of this ETF is that this is a brand new freaking asset class. Bitcoin is not only a brand new asset, it is also an asset class unto itself. Bitcoin has this superpower in the sense that it's not just one item in an entire industry. It is the industry and the item itself. And when's the last time a brand new asset class emerged for us? I want you to think about this. When is the last time a brand new asset class came into existence? When was it? You think 5 years? Nope. You think 10 years? No, longer. You think 20 years? No, longer. 50 years? Longer. Dude, the last real asset class to come into existence was this stock market, was equities. Now, I know people argue with me and say, well, Oliver, commercial debt and, junk bonds and, or they'll come up with something like, the derivatives market and da. No. I'm not talking about those subsets of things, of other things. I'm talking about a brand new thing. The last time we had a brand new thing come into existence in the financial world was stocks. What was that, 200 years ago? You're missing the enormity of this, people. You're missing the enormity. I'm not telling you that we are the luckiest humans to ever live for nothing. I'm not just pulling that out of the air just to say it because it sounds good. I really mean it. That no other humans born after us will have the experience that we have to see Bitcoin born and have its first years at taking over the freaking world. No human beings that have passed before us have this gift. No human beings born after us will have this gift. We're extraordinarily fortunate. And some of you are watching it in real time. It's in your face and you're still freaking ignoring it. That's how dumb you are. I'm sorry, I have to say it. You gotta be really, really dumb to miss this one. That's right, I said it. You're dumb. You're a level of dumb that there are no words to describe that level of dumb. It's not. I'm sorry. This is the biggest thing that I can remember happening in my entire lifetime, and I'm probably older than the vast majority of you people. It's freaking insane. Most people have no idea of what happened when the US finally, after almost every other country did, launched the gold spot ETF. It went on an 8-year run. 8 years straight up. You want to see something that barely had a pullback over an 8-year period? Just look at GLD, US's largest spot gold ETF. The only hiccup that it had was in 2007 when everything in the world had a hiccup. That financial crisis brought the global financial system to its knees, of course. And in everything everything collapses. It just had that little wrinkle in 2007, and it came back with a vengeance like it was nothing. 8 years straight to the upside. And you don't think that something as exponentially better than gold is not going to outdo that? Are you crazy? This thing is going to set records. It will set It will set the record for the greatest flow of capital in an ETF on the first day, on the first hour, in the first week, in the first month, in the first quarter, in the first year. They're going to set records, all-time new records. And let me tell you what else this ETF is going to do. I'm going to tell you something else, what many of you are missing. You see, what is the number one thing that holds people back who even start to understand Bitcoin a little bit? What holds them back? What's the number one thing that holds them back? After they get past all of their BS obstacles, mental obstacles, they still have a problem with what? The price. But it's $42,000 a coin. Well, guess what? These spot ETFs are going to greatly diminish, if not totally eradicate the price of one Bitcoin. This is called unit bias. That's the professional term for it. And it's what usually affects unsophisticated market players. The price of a unit is something that professionals don't pay attention to. All right. Novices and unsophisticated market participants pay a lot of attention to the unit price. That is why these shitcoin narratives can sucker them in, because they're going to launch a shitcoin at fractions of a penny per unit price, because that's what gets the dummies in. Oh, I can get 1 million coins for a few dollars. All right. Usually for a professional, that's a big giant red flag when you can get a lot, when your unit price is so small like that, that you can get a lot of units for a small amount. That usually instantly for a professional spells scam, scam, scam. They're trying to get the unsophisticated in. That's why they launched this with a small unit price. So unit bias does affect adoption. Unit bias does prevent people from taking advantage of this wealth technology, this life-changing generational wealth building savings technology. The price is as much as I try to preach against it, the price is still an impediment for your average Joe, not for the professional, but for the average Joe. Well, the ETFs, what are their prices going to be? $14 a share? $11 a share? $15 a share? Do you understand that for the average Joe, for your regular person on the street, they're not going to see Bitcoin at 42,000. They're going to see their ETF at $15, at $9, at $12. It is going to diminish one of the largest impediments to the average Joe getting into Bitcoin. It's 42,000. You bozos do not understand the enormity of this. You don't understand that the ETF buyer is not a freaking retarded trader. They're not crypto bros. Pension funds do not trade. They might rebalance at the end of a year or two, but they're not sellers on pumps to the upside. They're constant accumulators without ever stopping. The average 401k plan does not trade out of a thing. It just accumulates forever. And here's another thing that you're missing. Each one of these companies that will have a spot ETF, I want you to think about what's going on right now behind the scenes. I want you to think about the army that they put together to sell this thing like hotcakes. Do you understand that This is all about generating fees on the part of these firms. So the more assets they can get into their ETF, the more money they're going to make from the fees. They get a fee on the total amount of assets in the ETF. And if other ETFs are underperforming, they're going to actually suggest these sales staffs that they've put together, these marketing armies that each one of these behemoths have put together. They're going to encourage the clients to, this is underperforming. Let's take at least the majority of chunk of this and push it into Bitcoin. They see this as an opportunity to give the clients that are the least happy a chance to be happy by giving them some alpha and exposure to Bitcoin, and also generating new fees at the same time. There are armies of people waiting for the SEC to say go, to pounce, to pick up the phone, get on airplanes, go to their biggest clients with their recommended allocations to their spot ETF. They got the documents lined up. They got the pitch down to a T. They got the numbers and the proof backing up as to why your allocation should be 20%, why your allocation should be 7%, and why this client's allocation should be 80%. They got it all mapped out. Institutions do not do this on a whim, guys. They're already set up, ready to go. This has been in the works for 2 years. This is not something that they just decided to do. This game is too big to make decisions the way you make decisions. You make decisions like that. You make rash decisions like that. When there's trillions of dollars on the line, you can't afford to make rash decisions. You can't afford to all of a sudden in a couple of months decide we're going to go this way. This has been decided 2+ years ago. These people are ready. And let me tell you something, their hands was forced. You think these behemoths wanted to do this? Absolutely not. Their hand was forced. Who forced their hands to have to go this direction of forming spot ETFs and things of that nature? Their biggest clients. They could no longer ignore the cries. They could no longer ignore the threats. I'm going somewhere else then. The demand and the cries from their biggest clients reached the pitch and the peak that they could no longer say no. And they have to solve this. They had to solve this for the increasing growing demand from the biggest clients they have with the biggest amount of assets under management, for fear that they were going to lose them. I am telling you, not only is this huge, I just don't even think any of us are ready for what is going to be unleashed. This is crazy. Do you understand what I'm saying? Somebody just type, amen, Oliver. I got you. Somebody type that. Please. Does anybody get this? Am I the only one? All right. I want to touch on just a few other things before I let you go, because some of you are still too dense to understand the enormity of this. Guys, I told you that all you have to do is go back to late 2004, 2005, and look at the symbol GLD. Go do it now. Look at the symbol GLD. Look at what it did for 8 years. Now, add to that Bank of America's 118 multiplier. OMG. Gold doesn't have an 118 multiplier. I want you to think that even if that number's off, let's take 50 multiplier. Listen to me carefully. Listen to me carefully. If there's some noise around you, get rid of it. You gotta hear this. Gold has, even though gold is at it's at or near its all-time new highs, gold has grossly underperformed over the past 10 years, over the past 12 years, over the past 15 years. It's barely kept up with cash, and that is extraordinarily poor. Think about this. Gold has underperformed for a decade and a half. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, gold topped out in 2011 going into 2012. That's 10 freaking years of underperformance. 10 years, a decade of underperformance. Now think of Bitcoin being pitched to all the people holding a spot gold ETF today. Think of them being pitched by these armies of people that are going to go out with one purpose and one purpose only, to get funds in the new Bitcoin ETF. Their commissions are going to be on that one. Think of there's $200+ billion in spot gold ETF just in the United States. Think about this number, 200 billion. You don't think that when Bitcoin, something far more superior than gold, performance that makes gold seem like it shouldn't even exist, you don't think that this new digital gold spot ETF called Bitcoin is not going to suck and suck and suck and suck value out of the underperforming gold ETFs? There's $200 billion underperforming right now. Right this very day, $200+ billion underperforming for 10 years. And you don't think a portion of that is going to, over the first year, gravitate? You don't think someone's going to come to them and say, listen, okay, I'm not telling you to abandon gold or anything like that, but we do now have to split what we have between the analog version of gold and the digital version of gold. And this is going to add some additional alpha to your overall equation. You've clearly been underperforming with just the gold scenario. So why don't we do a 60-40 split? You keep 60% in gold and put 40% in Bitcoin, and that's the perfect split that we recommend. You don't think that's going to go on with that $200 billion that's underperforming for the last 10 years? They're going to come and show the performance of Bitcoin over 10 years, 400 million%. And then they're going to show Bitcoin gold's performance 3%. Are you freaking kidding me? If not a single additional dollar came from anywhere else, that's enough to send Bitcoin's spot price flying into the ether. Just the demonetization of the underperforming spot gold ETFs. It's not that far of a jump to say digital gold, is there? If you miss this, you are dumb. If you underplay this, you are just dumb. I'm sorry. I gotta say it. Now take all of that and add a multiplier to it. Do you understand that most things don't have a multiplier? Most things don't have a network effect like Bitcoin. 1 and 1 does not equal 2 with Bitcoin. This is proven throughout its entire history. Bank of America has the multiplier at 118. Studies have recently shown that it's actually higher than that. And I know the multiplier moves around depending upon where you are in the overall Bitcoin cycle. I get it, but it has recently been clocked at 190, meaning that $1 in produces $190 move in Bitcoin. Now really, you can't take it literally like that. You can't take it all the way down to where $1 does not move Bitcoin $119. No, but it does. The numbers break down like that. It's when you put 1 million, 2 million in, it moves it 118 times that. This is insane. This is not your crypto bros coming up with these metrics either, guys. So real organizations with reputations to put on the line. And there's one last thing that I want to mention to you before I go. Because I promised you I wouldn't keep this one long. But there's one last thing. I call it, guys, my 5 pillars of wow. I'm going to repeat that 2 more times for you. Oliver's 5 pillars of wow. One more time. Oliver's 5 pillars of wow for 2024. Let me list them for you, okay? Item number 1. These are the things that are, in my opinion, going to create a 2024 that's like, wow. Not like, wow, 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 Oliver, wow. No, wow. All right. These are the 5 pillars that create the big, giant wow. Number 1, ETF approvals. We just talked about that. I believe that every single application that meets the SEC standards, all of them are going to get approved. We place a preponderance of our attention on BlackRock because they're the biggest asset manager in the world. I get it. But collectively, it's more powerful than BlackRock. All of them, every single one. Why do I know this? Because the SEC can't pick favorites. The SEC can't be kingmaker. They have to fairly approve everyone who meets their demands. That is why recently they've been meeting with everybody. And let me just tell you this as a side note. I've always suspected Gary Gensler to be this closet Bitcoin maxi. I've always suspected that he is a Satoshi Nakamoto admirer, and in a big way. I remember hearing him refer to Satoshi as Satoshi Nakamoto-san, and that is the highest honor from a name perspective you can bestow on someone with a Japanese name. Not just Satoshi Nakamoto, but Satoshi Nakamoto-san. And something, I mean, I know he taught blockchain technology at MIT, but that's neither here nor there to me. But there's something about him that I've always suspected. That's a Bitcoin maxi. And let me tell you this, I am going to be proven right. If these approvals come on either one of these dates, guys, write the dates down, January 3rd, or January 9th. If the Bitcoin approvals come on any one of those dates, then you're going to say, well, goddamn, Oliver was right. He is a freaking maxi, because those are very special Bitcoin days. January 3rd and January 9th. January 3rd, Satoshi Nakamoto-san produced the Genesis block. There were 6 days before Bitcoin was mined. 6 days after the Genesis block, Bitcoin was mined. The first Bitcoin block was mined on January 9th. Do you understand? And the reason is very important. The reason that mining didn't start immediately right after January 3rd, the Genesis block, is because Satoshi Nakamoto knew that he couldn't be the first person to mine to make it as fair as possible. That he knew that if I'm the first person to mine, it's a registered security. If I am not the first person to mine, the odds of Bitcoin being a registered security are less. That someone else, I have to wait for someone else to mine the first block. And it took 6 days for the first person to say, I'll give it a shot. Boom, January 9th. Now, this January 3rd, the issuance of the Genesis block, and January 9th, the first day Bitcoin went live by the first miner mining the first block. Those are two very special dates. And I am telling you, if we get Bitcoin spot approvals on either the 3rd or the 9th, I want you to say it. Do that for me. Oliver was right. Yeah, we're going to see. But I digress, guys. Okay, look, the 5 pillars of WOW, my 5 pillars of WOW, all ETFs will be approved, likely in the first quarter of 2024. WOW, all of them, not one, all of them. WOW. WOW number 2. The halving will be shortly after. Bitcoin's halving. Every 4 years, Bitcoin goes through what's called the halving or halving, or whatever the term you want to use. Its issuance gets cut in half. So right now, Bitcoin is issuing 6.25 Bitcoin roughly every 10 minutes. That comes out to about 900 a day. That's going to drop to 3.125 every 10 minutes to about 450 Bitcoin per day. If demand stays the same and the issuance drops in half, this creates a supply shock. It's simple supply and demand metrics. This supply shock usually takes about 6 to 8 months to work itself through the system, and boom, you get a blast off. So you've got WOW number 1, all ETFs are being approved right before this effect, right before the halving. Number 2, you have the halving happening in April of 2024, which, remember, the major effect of that halving takes place 6 to 8 months after. The ETFs, the firms behind this, you don't think they know this? You think I'm the only one in the world that knows this? That knows that the halving effect takes place about 6 to 8 months later? Why do you think they want to get approved before the halving? Why do you think they want to have this head start run on accumulating as much Bitcoin as possible before the halving effect takes place around presidential election time, which is WOW number 3? OMG, it's presidential freaking election year. Do you know what that means? Accommodative financial policies, accommodative everything for the market. You're going to have all the winds behind assets in 2024. It's freaking US presidential election year. It's the year that you don't let something go wrong if you can help it. It's the year that you want things, even if they get a little bit out of hand, you want it to be positive. We've got all ETFs being approved in the first quarter of 2024. Wow. We've got the halving taking place in April 2024. Wow. We've got presidential election year. Wow. That's 3. You've got rate cuts coming in 2024. Wow. That's right. Fed pivot 2024. That's freaking in the bag already. Wow, wow, wow. That's 4. And the last wow of all. The lowest Bitcoin balances on centralized exchanges in many, 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 many years. Wow! Do you understand this? Do you understand all of this together? I'm going to say it again. If you miss this, you are dumb. If you miss this, you are dumb. If you adopt this attitude, well, Oliver, since it's this obvious, it's going to be the opposite. Dumb. Oliver, the market always does what the vast majority of people don't expect. Dumb. Oliver, but dumb. What if dumb? What? Dumb, 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 dumb. No excuses. You're dumb. There's no what if. There's no what about. Get your butts out of the way. Get your ifs out of the way. Get your what abouts, what ifs. Get all of that out of the way. If you miss this, you're just simply dumb. You're never going to make it. Just hang it up. Dumb, 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 dumb. All right. All right, guys, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. It's basically, there's nobody selling, guys. And that's for a reason. Let me just say this last thing before I kind of go to your questions here. Bitcoin is up over 87% from the market low. 180. Guys, there's nothing on planet Earth that's up like that. Nothing major like this. That's up 187% off of the November cycle low. Bitcoin's up over 160% year to date. There's no asset class even close to that. Do you understand? And no one's selling? Are you kidding me? There's no rebalancing going on here by the institutions. No, there's nobody wanting to dump and lock in their profits before the end of the year to make sure they have a good year end. No. Nobody's selling after a move like that. No. What do you think that means, people? Wake up. You better stack harder. None of you are stacking hard enough. I know you're not. You're too soft. But Oliver, that's how I hear you in my comments. But Oliver, just like that. Oliver, what about this? Forget that, man. Stack. But Oliver, I'm worried about this and that, and it's and what if and what about and that. Shut the F up and just stack harder. All right. I'm actually getting a little tired of begging you guys because this will not go on forever. I'm just trying to bring as many people along with me as possible during this period right here. But once this period is gone, I'm out, guys. I don't do this. I'm not going to sit on Twitter all day answering your dumb questions for the foreseeable future. I'm telling you, I'm not. I've got this period mapped out for myself. I'm going to spread the gospel as much as I possibly can. But once it's over, the most you're going to get from me is, I told you so, bozo. That's it. And I'm out. You think my life's going to be here? You think I'm going to be grabbing my phone to see who responded to my post for the foreseeable future? You think that's me? You think that's Oliver Velez? You have no idea who I am, buddy, if you think that's going to be the case. This is short term, I'm telling you. Once it's out, once you have missed it, the only thing that I get from me is I told you so, bozo. I'm just going to put that on repeat. All right. Thank you, Florida man. Was responding to us. Does somebody get it? Florida man says, I get it. Yes. All right. Thylac. Hi, Master. Hi. How are you doing, guys? You better wake up and you better start stacking harder, Velez. That's right. Better. Steve is saying, Oliver, por favor, walk us through what an ETF will do specifically for good altcoin cryptos. He didn't really ask me that, did he? Does this guy even know me? He's asking me. All right, so Steve, listen. What you're really asking me, Oliver, does shit float when the water rises? Can you explain that to me? Will shit float? I know that the water is going to rise. I know Bitcoin's going to rise, but will the shit float too? Dude, come on, focus. That being a dummy. Focus on the real thing, Bitcoin, guys. All right. You do it here. Alex says, I'm in, Oliver, with you since 2021. Awesome. Glad you're still here. A lot of people aren't still here. That's crazy. Heard a story today from my friend. I told you I met with a friend and at Starbucks, and he's telling me how, he's bright, person that he knows sold all of his Bitcoin at 16,000. And it's just very painful. And this person realized he made a mistake and it's at 25, 26,000. And he asks my friend again, you think I'm too late? And he's like, no, dude, what are you talking about? You were a freaking idiot. I get it. All right. Suck it up. And 25, 26 is still early. Just make amends. All right. Repent for your sins and get in now. Right. The dude just calls him up just a couple days ago and says, holy shit, Bitcoin's 42. Please, just, you can't be like this, guys. You can't be like this. All right, what else we got here? Queen Yasin says, I hear you, Oliver. I'm listening and I'm stacking 3 to 4 days a week. Awesome. I love that. That's aggressive. I love it. All my money is in. I'm talking to everyone that I know. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for being part of the army there. I get it, Robert. That's right. Robert says, I get it. All right. What else here, guys? Apple pie. I love this guy. He always joins in on my talks and on my posts or whatever. He's a Bitcoin hater. I love him. He says, well, Oliver, no one is buying Bitcoin. I mean, no one is buying. So he's playing off my words. I said, no one's selling? No one's buying. Yeah, no one's buying apple pie. It's only up 187% off the low. Yeah, it's no one buying. Yeah. The Bitcoin haters, they are the most ridiculous, and it's enjoyable to me at this particular point just to watch them squirm and how ridiculous they have to be at this point to actually support their stance. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed all the people that were calling for 3,500 Bitcoin, 9,000 or whatever, how ridiculous they have to be to support, to still continue to support versus just manning up and pivoting and saying, dude, I was wrong. I thought this, I don't, I'm on the right side now. Let's go. I mean, I did that. I had to flip my stance on Bitcoin. But that's what you do. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I mean, I'm not the brightest tool in the shed, but I'm not that dull. Like, dude, I can't ignore this anymore. This is in my face too much. But it's hilarious how they're so ridiculous, but their ego won't let them let go. Their ego won't let them pivot. So they take what they consider to be the lesser of two evils. The biggest evil is just killing the ego and just saying, no, I've got to relent here. No, they'd rather take the other route. I'm just going to become more ridiculous. I know Bitcoin is the best performing asset the world has ever known, and I can't put anything against it, but I'm still going to stay negative. I know it's the fastest adopted technology the world has ever known, and I can't put anything to compare against it, but I'm still going to be a hater of Bitcoin. I know in record time, it's become the top 10th asset in the history of the world, and it's still a baby. And nothing else has done that, but I'm still going to hate it. I know that there are 200 worldwide currencies, and in a short period, some of these currencies have been in existence for hundreds of years, and in less than 15 years, Bitcoin is the 16th most valuable currency in the world. And nothing else has ever done that before in the history of human mankind, but I'm still going to hate it and support that no one touches it. I know all the institutions now are the biggest asset managers in the world that have the brightest minds on planet Earth, and trillions of dollars behind them are tripping over each other, fighting. They're like in a UFC contest to be the first to get into Bitcoin. And I'm still going to be a hater of Bitcoin and tell you not to touch it. It's like the level of ridiculousness they have to go to is worth it for them to keep their freaking ego intact. Wow. Wow. That's incredible. You know, there used to be this popular marketing meme in the 1980s, late 1970s into 1980s. It was a marketing theme to promote college adoption, especially amongst your African American crowd. And the marketing theme was, the mind is a terrible thing to waste. I don't know how many of you remember this, but it played all over the place. The mind is a terrible thing to waste, which was basically the marketing thing. Get your ass to college, go into debt for 5, 10, 15 years of your life, and get a job that barely keeps you alive for the rest of your life. You know, that was the message, right? The mind is a terrible thing to waste. So get in debt for the rest of your life and learn from people who've never learned how to live their own lives. All right, but anyway, I digress. But anyway, okay, so the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Well, I have changed that. You know what my motto is today? My marketing theme, especially dealing with you bozos on X? It goes like this: the mind is a terrible thing. Period. I see it all the time, man. The mind is a terrible thing. The ego-filled mind is terrible. Wow. All right. What else we got here? Anything else here? Whoa, I got more comments than ever this time. Smash by. All righty, guys. JJ007, I want to thank you for changing my life, Oliver, when it comes to trading. I appreciate that. Thank you. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel and slowly getting better and better as time goes by. I can see the learning curve getting narrower. Thank you, boss. Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Oliver, Callan is saying, Oliver, not sure if some X comments are blocked or not, but trying to comment and not seeing the place to comment and agree with your take. All right, awesome. I appreciate that. Some of them are getting through here. All right, Mike has mentioned something really interesting here. He says, Oliver, it's the lowest amount of short-term holders in over a decade, and a low percentage on exchange gives me a feeling that the supply shock won't take 6 months after halving. We'll see. That's a good point, because historically, Mike is bringing up a good point here. So historically, guys, the way the halving affect, a lot of people get disappointed right after the halving because they have historically looked at the halving as some instantaneous jolt or shot of rocket fuel to the Bitcoin market immediately. And usually that doesn't happen. So a lot of times you see softness in the Bitcoin spot price after the halving because of the disappointment that happens after the build up of the expectation of the halving. And it takes, in every financial market, guys, it takes about 6 to 8 months for a change to really seep itself through and take effect. And so this is the case whether the Federal Reserve is raising or lowering interest rates. You don't see an immediate effect. You see a reactionary effect by market participants. But for it to be a real effect in the economy, it takes about 8 months out, 6 to 8 months out. Same thing with Bitcoin. This halving is historically takes 6 to 8 months before you start to see the blast off effect from the supply shock. Doesn't happen immediately. And what Mike is saying is that maybe this time is different. It's a little dangerous to say that, but I get what he's saying. This time might be different just because of all the tailwinds that we have for 2024. And it's very possible. Guys, it's possible that bear markets are a thing of the past. What I mean by that is I'm not talking about deep pullbacks. I'm talking about the pullbacks that historically we were used to. I remember living through pullbacks of 70, 80% in Amazon. Amazon was one of my largest holdings for decades. And I remember living through those, and then they got less and less and less. This could be the end of 70% declines for Bitcoin, 80% declines for Bitcoin, which is only going to increase adoption and bring more money in, because if the unit price was a deterrent to a lot of people getting in, the other thing is that it's volatile. So if it becomes less volatile, more money is going to pour into it. And this constant demand from all of these ETFs and getting pension funds and getting 401k plans signed up and so forth and so on, and they're not sellers. This could put a floor under your typical Bitcoin drop, which will only rush trillions into the asset. So Mike has a point here, but I will tell you this. I'm very careful about this time could be different. While I don't ignore that, I base all of my models on what has happened, and I would rather be surprised to the upside than change my models. So my models are based on what has always happened. So based on what's always happened, we're going to get the blast off after the halving. So we're going to get this initial jolt from the ETF. That will wane down a little bit. Everyone will then start looking to the halving to be the second jolt. That might cause some disappointment that the second jolt doesn't happen right away because they're unaware of what I've just explained to you, and that the jolt happens 6 to 8 months out. And around October presidential election time, we're going to see Bitcoin on freaking fire. Now that's if history's any guide, and it usually is. All right. All right, guys, listen, love you to death. I wanted to try to keep this short. I can never try to do these things. I hope you just appreciate us me getting on the mic like this and just talking about something that pops up with me in my life regarding Bitcoin at the current time. I hope the surprise live doesn't really perturb you very much. If you've missed any of this, just remember you can always catch the recording. Always also remember that all of these live sessions do wind up on my Bitcoin podcast called Bitcoin Unleashed. Right now, you can find that on Spotify, Bitcoin Unleashed, and you can find it on Fountain app, where you can earn free sats listening to it. All right. Please search that out. And if you're unaware of that, there are a lot of other very, very enlightening talks on Bitcoin on that podcast, Bitcoin Unleashed. I want to thank you guys for giving me your time. I'm always telling you your time is the only thing in life more precious than Bitcoin. So I appreciate it. I hope I've delivered something of value here, and I'll get better and better at this every time I address you. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Back at the trading game tomorrow. Ciao for now. Boo! My name is Oliver Velez, and I am your 13%er Bitcoiner. Be safe out there, and until next time. Boo!